Okay, ready to begin? You good? Yeah? Okay, great. Alright, so Shalom Aleichem, this is a fantastic opportunity. We're going to be learning together, having a little bit of a series, I think once a week, Bez Hashem. And we will call it a Think Big series, but basically hashkafa and machshava of how to apply and make the most of ourselves in terms of becoming big people. So I want to start like this. And just to get clear, the next year at 4:45, right? Yeah. Perfect. Okay, great. How old are you guys?
15, 16.
15, 16, 16, 17.
15, 16.
Yeah. Perfect. So, okay, the first question to understand is, I want to try to understand, is there such a thing called a teenager in the Torah? Number one. And
no.
What is this and how does it work? Huh?
No.
You would say na'ar so na'ar is often translated as a lad. So you would, I agree with you, that's probably the closest you're going to get to the word in the Torah for a teenager. Is there such a concept? Meaning to say, 13 to 20. Is there something significant about 13 to 20? Or no? 13 we know, bar mitzvah, right? Bar mitzvah is 13. 13 to 20 is that like, is there anything in that? Or is that just because it happens to be teen, 13, 14, 15, so but is there anything in it? So it happens to be, interestingly enough, that it's brought down that when you're 20, when you're 13, you're chayiv in all mitzvahs, that we know. Chayiv in all mitzvahs. Even there, by the way, before your bar mitzvah, like you often think to yourself, well, before your bar mitzvah, you can be like, totally not Jewish, basically. And then, bar mitzvah, now you got to be from. That's it. Overnight, you got to be from. Because before your mitzvah, you're not obligated. It's my father's obligation, shum chinuch. But what, you don't have to be Jewish? Of course you have to be Jewish. Of course you have to be Jewish. I'll tell you what the Telzer Rav says. This just as an introduction. Telzer Rav says an amazing thing. He says the difference between being under bar mitzvah and over bar mitzvah is doctor's orders versus the king's orders. What's the difference? As you go to the doctor and you say, I've got this terrible problem, my back is killing me, and I do this, I do that, and they do x-rays and they say, you know what, okay, we prescribe for you the following drug, you need to take this medicine every day, twice a day, morning and evening, with at meal times, okay? And you need to do it for 3 weeks, then give it a break for a week, and then another 3 weeks. So that's what he says. Now imagine you then turn around and say, do I have to? What's he going to say to you? He'll say, you don't have to. If you don't want to, you don't want to get better, then don't do it. If you want to continue with the agonizing pain in your back, you're like, shut up. You came to me, you've done x-ray, if you want to do it, this is how to do it. This is what you're supposed to do. You don't ask, do I have to? It's like a ridiculous thing to say to the doctor, This is what's good for you. When a king says, do something, then you have to. So the difference between before bar mitzvah and after bar mitzvah is, before bar mitzvah, if he says, goes to the Rav and say, listen, I'm not mechuyev, do I have to keep Shabbos? I'll say to you, but it's the same as doctor's orders. Do you want to do what's good for you? Then of course you have to keep Shabbos, Do I have to do the mitzvahs? Well, of course, it's what's good for you. But you're not mechuyev, it's doctor's orders. When after your bar mitzvah, now it's the tzivur of the melech. Now the king says, okay, now you have to do it. Now you have to. But it was good both times. So it's not the pshat that you don't have to be full before your bar mitzvah. Of course you have to. But, so there's bar mitzvah. Fine, we know bar mitzvah is very significant. But there is something called bar einshin, which means that when you're 20, you become chayav Misa b'dei shamayim. Misa b'dei shamayim, according to one opinion, you can only get Misa b'dei shamayim when you're 20. That does not mean that it's mutter. It doesn't mean it's allowed to do those things like Misa b'dei shamayim. You're only capable of Misa b'dei shamayim when you're 20. Misa b'dei adam, you're ready now. Somebody breaks Shabbos, he's chayav skila, so Adim, etc. But Misa b'dei shamayim when you're 20. So you see, at least there is something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, look, there is something between 13 and 20. And I would say the closest word in the Torah for a teenager is na'ar. Na'ar. So I want to speak about being a teenager, what it means, and then the reason why this is so critical is because it will explain a lot of things and help in your avodas Hashem, which is what it's all about. So let's first get to the heart of it. You know, there was a guy that came over to me on Rosh Hashanah after davening. I'm talking about an adult came over to me after davening, and he had certain questions. He had a number of questions. And there were questions about whatever, how do we know certain parts of the Torah are true, interesting questions about the origins of the Torah. Okay, fine. They weren't like, earth-shattering questions. They've been asked before, they were fine, we could deal with it, discuss it, there's no problem. But he came over to me ask these questions, and his mum was crying. His mum was crying. And it was Rosh Hashanah. He said, look, I'm really sorry for, everyone else had left shul, it was just him and me. He said, look, I'm really sorry for crying, but you have no idea, every year these questions come up again and again, and it bothers me so much. I get so frustrated, and it's so hard for me, and I have to try and get to the root of it, try and understand these questions, trying to get answers that satisfy me and help me, and I just struggle with this every year. And I told him that's very normal, because Rosh Hashanah is you're going back to the root of who you are. Now the reason why I mention this is because you will find, and it's very normal, at your age, not just is it normal, it would probably be normal not to have, it would probably be abnormal not to have it. But it's very normal to have lots of questions. When I say questions, there's lots of different types of questions. That doesn't mean every day you have questions, it means they're what we call existential questions. Existential questions means questions of existence. Meaning, questions about yourself. Inside of yourself, there are questions where you're asking, who am I? Who is Hashem? What does He want of me? How do I know that He exists? How do I know the Torah is true? And if it is true, what does it mean for me? That's on the level of intellectual level of question of what is the Torah about? Who is Hashem, etc. But there's also questions of who am I? What am I capable of? What does Hashem want of me? What am I supposed to do in this world? What can I do in this world? What can I achieve? What am I supposed to achieve? These are questions that actually are not just real, but probably the most important questions you should be asking. Because these are questions that are going to define you in your life. And the reason why it's so critical is because I'm going to let you into a secret that you probably already know. When you get to a certain age, bon agid, let's just say 20, 21, most of those decisions, most of them have been solidified, and the direction of your life has basically been mapped out. That doesn't mean you can't change. You can still change. And I don't just mean change, I'm going to move from living in England, I'm going to go live in America. Okay, that's a change of decision. But I mean, like, your direction. What do I want? Why do I want it? What's my life going to be about? What am I focused on? And I don't just mean the classic answers of course we want you to keep Torah mitzvahs, but it's more than that. It's what's my chelek in Torah? What am I supposed to be doing in Torah? Not everybody's the same. What's my talent? What are my capabilities? Now once you get to a certain age, let's say around about 20, 21, after being a teenager, it's more or less set in stone. Again, of course you can still change, of course you can, and it has happened many times over, but that's why what you're going through now is a very, very important period in your life. Very. Because if you set yourself up in the right way during these years, you've mamash changed your life forever. That's why it's so critical. And that's why, by the way, it's also a very tough battle. Because the Yetzer Hara knows, if I can get you now, if I can mess you up now, then I've messed you up for life. And you might think, well, come on, you can't be messed up for life, can you? Oh, you can. Oh boy, you can. It's possible, sorry to scare you, it's possible to be messed up for life. It's possible to make decisions that are the wrong decisions. It's possible to go down a path that is the wrong path. Totally. And that's quite scary. And that happens during these years, are the formative years of your life, of you're going to actually be mapping out the path. Now that doesn't mean you have to have details. Oh yeah, what am I going to do? I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. No. It's not so simple. But it's critical. You're setting yourself up during these years. And therefore these questions that you might feel, a person might feel, existential questions. And by the way, sometimes they're quite frustrating. They're annoying. You can feel an inner frustration. And sometimes it's just, you might feel like a general frustration. So that could be also, could be hormones, you're developing physically as well. So you can be, just like when a person gets very hungry, he's frustrated. When you start to grow, you go through a growth spurt. Okay, you can also have that as well. There are physical reasons for it as well, that's true. But the inner frustration of, but who am I? And I don't just mean from or not from. I mean, yeah, of course I'm from, of course I'm a totally committed person. But what does Hashem want of me? What are my talents? And that is something that can be very frustrating. It can hurt. To the extent that this guy, who was much older than a teenager, when he came to me on Hashem, he was crying. He was crying for a real reason. Because this was still eating him up. He hadn't worked on all these issues yet. And there are, by the way, two things that a person has. There are your talents on one side, what we call your koichos, your capabilities. That's something which is critical. And then there's your chesroinus, things that are going to bring you down. Things that bring you down, unfortunately, will be things that you often fail in. That's the Vilna Gaon. Vilna Gaon says if you want to know how you can know what are my failures, what are my difficulties, what's my tikkun, the word is called tikkun. What am I here to fix? In myself, those are the things that you find yourself failing in. Time and again. Coming up again, oh, I messed up again. That's okay. You messed up again because Hashem wants you to work on that. He's put you in the world to work on that. Yeah, but why do I have that and the other guy doesn't have that? Never ask that question. Because your struggle, you're finding hard, and he doesn't have that one. But his struggle that he's finding hard, you don't have that either. And he's asking the same thing about you. How come he has it easy in that area? That's something, we don't ask, why do I have this problem and not that, and that guy doesn't have that. That's where Hashem created the world, that's where Hashem has created you, and it's not going to help anyway. Why do I have my problems? It's never going to, that's the way it is. Hashem wants you to work on that. So you're going to have chesroinus, things that are issues, but you also have your talents. And both are critical. In Hebrew we call it tikkunim, tikkun and tafkid. Your tikkun, what you need to rectify, are things that you have an issue with. Your tafkid is things that you are talented in. And by the way, you're not going to know the answers to all of this all at once. It's a bit of a discovery as you go through your life of certain things that I fail in again and again, and talents that perhaps you never knew that actually come up. Both are very important. I'll take a question in 1 second. Both are very important. It's critical to work on your chesroinus, on your problems, your issues, but it's just as critical, probably much more critical, to work on your strengths. Play to your strengths. Because if a guy simply just doesn't do Aveirus, let's say for example, yeah, I did really well, I didn't do any Aveirus. That's a very good start. But what did you do? Imagine a guy gets married and he says to his wife, I've learned all about being married, I'm not going to beat you. I've been told and taught everything. I'm not going to beat you. I'm not going to, be rude to you. I'm not going to smash you over the head. I've learned all those things. Hello, okay, that's kind of like basic. You need to learn, but what are you, going to do? Well, that's part of your life, sorry.
I was going to say, is it possible for chesroinus to be talent, but...
Yeah, they usually are. They usually come together. It's a good question. Meaning, often a guy, are you chesroinus? What's your talent? Yeah, often a guy, let's say he's got the gift of the gab. He's great. He's great with speech. He's outgoing, he's friendly, he's excellent, and he can, so usually, often that guy, his chesoron is, oh whoops, he's overstepped the boundary once again, and he blundered by saying this and saying that when he shouldn't have. But at the same time, he's very good at using his speech to give another person chizuk, etc. So the wrong approach is to say, oh, I always mess up with my speech. From now on, I'm just going to be one of those silent guys that never speaks, right? It's not going to work. It's not going to help because, firstly, you're not a silent guy, number one. And number two, that's never going to solve the situation, right? It's never going to solve it. So it very, very often goes together. And by the way, being a silent guy is also got some minus and constraints. A silent guy he'll be great, he'll be reserved, he doesn't make the blunders of the guy who's blurts out whatever he blurts out, but at the same time, he remains silent in the corner and he doesn't get close to the Rebbe or ask questions when he should ask questions, and he's not advancing himself. There's advantages and disadvantages to everything. That's definitely true. But you have to work out, and you have to work out your personality and work out that's what part of Avodas Hashem is. And it starts now, continues in yeshiva, but you've got to recognize who you are to make the best you out of it. This is very, very critical. Yeah. What did somebody want to say? Yeah.
I was going to ask, can you give some examples of strengths that someone can have?
Yeah, sure, it's good. Okay, so strengths, in terms of working out, it's a good point we're saying here. What speaks to you? People often ask me, they'll say to you, I'll give you a couple of examples, they'll say to me, what should I learn? Okay, I'll say, what should I learn? Let's talk from, what should I learn? So you'll often hear from people, I'll tell you what you should learn. You should learn this, this, and this. Now, okay, Gemara is like pretty much bread and butter, and that's fine. If a guy says learn Gemara, then we get that. But what you have to understand is, if I simply say to you, you should learn Holius. I mean, how can I say that? I don't know you. You have to give advice, you have to know the person. And to know the person, even to give advice about, let's say, what to learn, I would have to give you options and basically ask you what resonates within you. What speaks to you? If I say to you, and again, it could be nothing speaks to you at this point in your life, which is fine also, by the way, because you're not necessarily into learning. And I don't know. One guy will he'll love, ripping a sugya apart, the Ilan. He just loves it. He loves the back and forth. They love the arguing, and it's like great. And the whole day they could, amazing. That's one type of guy. Another guy says, well, I'm just like wasting my time with that. I want to just, cover more ground. Great. Okay. Another guy, he'll say, I love learning Chumash with Mepharshim. I just love it. Chumash blows my mind. Another guy will say, I love the Hasidic Sfarim. I think it's amazing. Right? Another person will learn Nach. He'll think Nach is like, the bee's knees. I love Nach. Another guy will say, I don't know, it doesn't speak to me so much. And by the way, things can change at different parts of your life. Another guy says, I love Halacha. I can tell you the ins and outs of it. You have to know what speaks to you. Now that's something important, it's significant. It means you're allowed to respect who you are. When people just say, no, I'm telling you, this is what you must do this. It's not like everything in Torah is you must, but it's got to resonate. It's got to feel good. I'm meaning to say, okay, if I use that, I'm like, okay, well, it doesn't feel good to get up for Shacharis, so I'm not going to get up for Shacharis. I don't mean that. I mean, and even that, by the way, even davening. Well, maybe davening doesn't resonate within us yet. We'll have to do that. We'll learn how to daven. It's not easy to daven. It's not easy. You have to learn how to daven. I love davening. Love it. I mamish love davening. But most people are not like that. Certainly not when they're younger. Definitely not. You're just like, well, what am I doing? I'm just saying some words. Torah and everything's got to resonate. But you see, that could be not because davening is boring, but because you haven't understood what davening is yet. Right? When you understand that davening is an opportunity for you to tap into yourself and to speak to Hashem and to get into a place where you can pour your heart out to Hashem, it's for your sake. Davening is for your sake. Well, what could be more enjoyable than that? But again, that's maturity. It requires learning. It's a skill. And you can't tell that to younger kids. It's like impossible. Anyway, so we'll get there. But it has to examples of things that your strengths are things that speak to you. If I say to you, one guy will say, I love writing. He's brilliant. He's a brilliant writer. He's fantastic. He knocks it out. He does a fantastic. One guy's he's very artistic. So great. That's a talent. That's something that means that speaks to you. That's to be used. How, when, exactly? Okay, we can work it out. But what speaks to you is something that's important. And that is a discovery. It's not something that you can answer. Maybe you can answer a lot of it now, but not necessarily all of it, and that's fine. It's part of discovering who you are. So again, this is very, very important. To be aware of working on yourself means to understand, number one, I've got things that constantly are my chesroinus. And everyone without exception, every single person in the whole world has things that are chesroinus. Problems, issues that they need to work on. Some big, some small. And by the way, the good news is that you do work on it and it becomes much better. Some guy will get angry very easily. He'll be very jealous of another person. He finds social settings very difficult. Another guy, he just can't help but always seems to say the wrong thing or embarrass himself or he doesn't speak up or whatever it might be. Though all those things are very normal. And you have to realize, when you think, but I'm the only guy with that issue, then that's not true. You're never the only guy with that issue. Just to you, you don't know other people have that issue. I don't know what's going on in your head. And you don't know what's going on in my head and his head and his head. But everybody's got stuff going on. And you have to work on yourself to recognize what is that. And we're not going to do that now, but this is just, we're laying out the basics, the foundations. Chesroinus, but mindless, what are my talents? And don't ever say, chas v'shalom, I don't have any talents. You might not necessarily recognize all your talents as of yet. Oh boy, do you have talents. Oh boy. And you know I know? You know I know? And I know. Do you know why? Because you've all got an neshama. And I'm not joking. If you have an neshama, that means you have a battery pack that is so strong and so powerful, it means you're capable of explosive, nuclear, unbelievable things in this world. Unbelievable. Each one according to the way Hashem has made him. But you're capable. Just what is it? How's it going to play out? Okay. But at least be aware. The biggest chaval in the world, the biggest tragedy is for a person to say, I'm a nobody. I'm a nobody. I don't have any skills, any talents, I've got no brain, I've got no heart, I've got nothing. Chas v'shalom. So these questions of existential questions, which means my existence, Hashem's existence, what am I about? What is the world about? Questions that might be plaguing you are actually healthy. They don't feel good because they're frustrating, but they're actually healthy. Do you know why? Because they'll challenge you to become a real person. What we want to really establish here, at least in these sessions, and the most important thing you can have in your life is to be a real person. Be real. To be real means to be genuine. You're trying to do it for the right reason. You want to be real. I don't want to be somebody, and you mustn't be somebody, who's just doing it because, well, I guess he's doing it and he's doing it, so I might as well do it. Torah's emes, or should not someone Torah's emes. That means truth. In fact, a better translation is Torah's emes, Torah of reality. It's real. So if it's not real for me yet, that's okay. That's okay. Davening is not real for me as of yet, but that's being real, because you're real with the fact that it's not actually yet. It's not striking a chord with me. That's okay. You're being honest. As long as you're being honest about yourself, you're going to make it in life. You're honest with yourself. As soon as you start pretending to yourself, that's it. That's never a way forward. So it's about being honest with who you are and what you're capable of. So these feelings of the frustration, that's normal. But let me explain another level of what is it that a teenager goes through. It's very important to explain. So a teenager, as we spoke about, and now, in Torah, what's the word for a child? Hebrew word?
Yeah.
A yeled is true. What's a child?
Cotton.
A cotton. Also the word. Yeled is true. And cotton, I was looking for cotton. A cotton. What do we call an adult, therefore? A cotton. Opposite of a cotton is a gadol. A gadol. Now, what is the difference between a child and an adult? And then we'll understand where you guys are in the middle. A child, a cotton, let's call that up to bar mitzvah, approximately. Then you've got the adult, a gadol. Let's just call it from 18 and upwards, just for the argument's sake. And you guys are in the middle. In the middle means you're in the transition period. That's very important you understand. And we're going to give a definition for a cotton, a definition for a gadol, and then we're going to understand where you guys are in the middle. But the word transition is something which is very key to understand. Because nobody likes transitions. You know, it's like going to a school for the first day. You'll all remember the first day of high school. It was horrible. was like weird and awkward, and you have to go like, you know, I don't know. You went from being the top of the school, you knew everybody, everything was happening, and you were comfortable, to a completely new setting, and you didn't know what you were doing, where you were going, and who was who, and these people are much older than you. It's like, nobody likes that. It's a transition. You're moving from one thing to the next. That's hard. That's not easy. And you should know transitions, they're not enjoyable, but they're critical, because you're moving from going from a lower place to a much higher place. And transitions in Torah and in the world are slow, and they've got to be slow. Example, daytime, and you have nighttime. It doesn't go from being day, and then bright day, and then boom, all of a sudden it goes pitch black. It doesn't happen that way. The sun moves, it moves towards evening, Bein Ha'arbayim, as we call it, it gets darker, then we have Shkia, sunset, and then slowly but surely the sun sets, and then the day moves slowly, beautifully, incredibly actually, into the nighttime. Bein Hashmashos, we've got Bein Hashmashos as well. We recognize even in Halacha that we've got this interim period called Bein Hashmashos. It's a mixture of day and night, and it's a mixture. And that's how it goes. It never goes from one flips to the other. It's too dangerous if you flip from one to the other. That's very dangerous. And all transitions have to be healthy, slow. It's a bit frustrating, but it's the only way to do it. You know, I was speaking to, on Yom Tov, I was speaking with my father-in-law, Rabbi Tetz, at one of the meals, and he told me that we were discussing about Yemosei Mashiach. Maybe another time we'll discuss this, about Yemosei Mashiach and what happens by Yemosei Mashiach. And there's different opinions in the Gemara. Shmuel says that there's no difference between this world and Yemosei Mashiach. It's going to be more or less normal, except Shibud Malchios. We won't be subjected to the nations of the world, and Hashem's presence will be revealed, but it'll be pretty much the same. And then there's other Gemaras that say, mitzvahs b'teilos l'osig lovon. There won't be any mitzvahs anymore. You know why? Because you won't need to do mitzvahs. I won't need to shake lulav. Arba minim, all the places that the Arba minim can get you, you won't even need the Arba minim. You won't need to blow the shofar. You won't need to wear tzitzis. You'll be flying high. And in the higher world, you won't even need those mitzvahs. So which one is it? Normal or no mitzvahs? Which one? And the answer, says the Ramchal, is it's a transition. You're going to go from this world, and it's first going to start normal. And then there's going to be transition. As you move towards more and more later stages, it gets to less and less things that you're used to, and there's a transition. There has to be a transition. That's the only way. So somebody asked my father-in-law, he said to him, well, why does it have to be that way? Why can't we just go from being in this world, and then boom, we're into the next world? So he said, I asked with Moshe Shapiro that question, and Moshe said, if you do that, you'll basically explode. The human being, it's not how Hashem makes the world. You'll explode. It's got to be a healthy transition. So too, when it comes to being a teenager, there's a thing called a child. Now, what are children about? Koton is miloshin katua, means to be cut off. A child sees the here and now. Okay, when you're very young, all you see is your meal. If I don't get my next meal, I'm going to cry, I'm going to scream. Why do babies cry and scream? What are you doing? Why do they cry and scream? You know why? Because they think, I'm going to be like this forevermore. I'm never going to have a meal. I'm going to, help, scream. Okay, makes sense. So a baby's crying, but then you realize, but don't worry, it's okay, the meal's coming. It might not come in the second, but it's happening. And as you're a child, you want the here and now. The child is about right here, right now, that's all I care about. I don't even see anybody else. I'm kotan, I'm katua, I'm cut off. I only see right now. A godel, on the other hand, an adult, a godel, let's call him a godel, sees the bigger picture. Why are gedolim called gedolim? Because they have a bigger vantage point. They see a much bigger picture. We're trapped in the little here and now, and they have a much bigger picture. That's what it means to be a godel. By the way, that means you could be an adult and still not be a godel. I don't just mean a godel be soil, I mean still not have the maturity. A lot of adults are also stuck in the here and now and behaving like a child. So it's not simply just a question of age. Once you get to this age, then everybody, all of a sudden behaves maturely. No. So there is a thing called a cotton and a thing called a godel. And right now, you guys are in a transition stage. And what that means is, inside of all of you, you have a part of you that's a cotton, a child, and a part of you that's a godel. And I'll give you a couple of simple examples. There's nothing wrong with comics. You can enjoy comics. Nothing wrong with comics, as long as, they're probably not so interesting, but there's nothing wrong with comics. Now, when you were younger, you probably like comics. I don't know, that's what kids like. Now, the last time I went on the train, I don't normally see adults poring over a comic. Not normally. Again, there's quite a few exceptions out there, but it's just generally, again, it's a harmless thing. It's nothing wrong with comics, but that's generally associated with being a child. And adults don't do that. Okay. So you might still be drawn after things that you remember from childhood. And you like them. Those childish things are very warm and attractive to you. And that's fine, if they're kosher. That's fine. So on the one hand, there's a child in you. That's still quite alive. Child. On the other hand, you all of a sudden, you guys doing GCSEs?
Yeah.
So that's like quite advanced. Some of that stuff, you like ask your parents, and I know exactly what they say. They'll say, yeah, I used to be able to do that as well once. I can't remember, but when I was your age, I could also do that, yeah. Like most adults also like forget how those things work, and it's quite advanced. Academically, that's quite impressive. So one second, who's going on here? Who's the real you? You're capable of you're still attracted to a lot of the childish things that you had when you were a child, but you're intellectually quite adult. So who is the real you? The answer is both. At the moment, there's two people in the driving seat, and sometimes you're a cotton, and sometimes you're a goggle. Sometimes your parents will say, okay, sure, you can go out and stay out whenever you like. Yeah, really? Yeah. So you'll go, okay, fine. And there's no limit, and then you get a call. It's 1 in the. Listen, I hope you don't mind, but your son, whatever, X, he's lying in the gutter and he's totally drunk. Should we bring him home? Yeah, right now. So you step him home. You're like, what happened to you? I thought you were responsible. Whatever it is. Yeah. So one second. So next time, 2 weeks later, you say, okay, I'm going out now. The parents will be like, yeah, but you better be back by 11:30. But why? What do you mean? I'm an adult. I know what to do. Yeah, you know what to do. So why did you end up in the gutter last time? With vomit all over you. So, on the one hand, there's the child in you, which pulls you after the here and now and immature behavior. On the other hand, there's an adult in you that is capable. And the truth is, there's a friction. There's a friction. Who's in charge? And that's why I say about your parents, if you think you don't know who you are, because it can change from day to day. Sometimes it's the child speaking, sometimes it's the adult speaking. Are you capable of mature conversation or immature conversation? Well, both. I'm pretty comfortable in both worlds. So who's the real you? You don't know from day to day, and your parents definitely don't know. You try and handle a teenager. Not so posh it, right? And they say to you, so what do your parents have to do? They have to say, well, we have to just assume that it's the child speaking because we can't run the risk of making the same mistakes we made before. So that's why you often get frustration. Why can't they trust me? I'm an adult. I've got, I'm doing stuff. They can't do my GCSEs. I know what I'm doing. I'm an adult. But you are an adult, but there's also the child. Imagine a guy, can I just give an example? Imagine a guy, he's like, he says, I'm a really good driver. I'm a really good driver, yeah? I drive along, I'm pretty safe, I'm pretty good, but every so often, you should just know, every so often I just get this like crazy urge to just put my foot down and just go for it. And I don't care who's in front of me. It does not matter. They could be walking, I'll just kill anybody in the path. I just get this rush. I love it, But most of the time I'm a good driver. It's just every so often I just get this like thing, I just got to go vroom, and whoever's in the way, I just go bang. Okay, that guy's not going to get a license, right? Because, what do you mean, but 95% of the time I drive well. Yeah, but we can't run the risk that 5% of the time. So are you behaving like a cotton or behaving like a god? And the answer is you have both inside of you, and that's why it's a bit of a friction. You have child and you have adult, and a teenager is the transition between going from a child to an adult. And that's why it's so tough, because who is the real you? And you know what? It's hard to answer that question, because when I speak, I don't know who I am. Am I representing the childish side of me, or am I representing the adult side of me? It's not so easy to put your finger always on it. In fact, it's probably easier to say it's probably the child side of me. It's probably. By the way, adults can also be children, but I'm just saying, particularly when you're a teenager, this is what you're going through. Transitions. This is something which is very key. And the reason why I mention this is because if you know this piece of information, you already know half the battle. If you understand that the reason why you're feeling often frustrated, why can't my parents just understand me? Why can't I just do what I want? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? If you have those conversations inside of you, it's real. Because why is it real? Because you are having a friction. There's a battle inside of you called cotton versus gobble, child versus adult. And that is such a key battle. Because there's only one winner in this battle, if you really want to succeed. And the answer is, for sure, the God. That's the one who actually operates with seichel, intellect, with proper focus. But it's not so easy, because we love being a child. We love it. It's a battle. But knowing that it's a battle is already half the battle. Knowing that that's where the frustration comes from. And that's why in this session what we've discussed is so critical. Because we're trying to identify what is it? Why is there a turmoil inside of me? Why is there stuff going on? And there's a reason why there's stuff going on inside of you is because Hashem's trying to wake you up. He's trying to say, hello, whoever you are, Moshe, Chaim, whatever you want to call yourself, where are you? Hashem's saying, come on, you've got talents, but I've also got problems. I've got issues. Yeah, that's okay. That's normal. Everybody has that. There's a child pulling one way. There's the adult pulling the other. And the good news is that the more you keep siding with the adult, the quicker you make that transition from being a child to being an adult. You're making it to the other line. Successfully. Now I often say that there's probably 3 translations to the word na'ar. Somebody mentioned before, the word for, probably the closest word in Torah for teenagers, na'ar. Na'ar means, on the one hand, na'ar means somebody who is, lashon er, awake. Awake. Number 2, na'ar can mean to be confused. It says in the Torah, with the Yam Suf, the Egyptians were tossed around by Yinares Mitzrayim. They were churned around. And then there's a third translation of na'ar, which is na'ar, v'hu na'ar is bnei bilah. A lad, but Rashi says he was acting foolishly. Yes, on the one hand, it's a time period where you are bena'ar. There's a confusion, because I'm not clear. Am I child, am I adult? Do I want this, do I want that? It's an identification of trying to know who you are. That's the na'ar, the confusion. On the other hand, you're awake. What do you mean you're awake? Don't teenagers sleep until 11 o'clock? Isn't that synonymous with it? No, what it means to be awake, it means the whole world has just opened up to you. You suddenly see a new world. Your eyes have been opened up for the good and for the bad as well. For the good, you're more intellectually capable. For the bad, you suddenly see a whole world that's full of tumor as well. And you think that that's attractive. It feels attractive, but you think it's also attractive. That's a mistake. That's for another time. And the third is the idea of confusion. It's a confusing time. It's being awake, your whole world's being opened up, but it can also be na'ar, a time of being foolish. And therefore the answer to all of these problems is to side with the godly. Is to say, I'm going to make the mature decisions. How we do that we're going to have to work on. But at least to identify why there's a source of frustration during these years, that's critical. That's very, very important. At least now you can understand, what is it, Hashem? Every inside turmoil is HaKadosh Baruch Hu calling you to work on your chesronos, the things that you are struggling with, and everybody struggles with things, and to also further and forward your talents and your capabilities. We're going to stop now, and I just want to end, and then we'll take with questions, that this is so critical. It might sound obvious, a lot of these things, but you should know, this is the basics of what's going to make you into a real great person. Being real with who you are, and trying to move to the next stage. You're in a period of transition, and that's normal, and it takes time, and it doesn't happen overnight. Everybody wants to learn, they say the famous expression, everyone wants to learn Shas overnight, and also get a good night's sleep. That's what we want it all. It takes time. Nothing happens overnight. It takes time. Slowly, every step in the right direction builds you into a greater person. Okay, we'll stop here. Happy to